Welcome to the Last Talk Show. Tonight we're talking with Bernard Fowler from the Rolling Stones as we get ready to watch Havana Moon, the Rolling Stones in Havana. Watch this.
All the way from the island of Nantucket, Massachusetts, it's Last Talk Show! Last Talk Show!
Bernard, first question. Beatles or Stones?
Stones.
That was easy. All right, moving on. 35 Stones. Have you ever played with Paul or anybody?
I had the pleasure of meeting them. Well, not really met Paul McCartney, but when I was working with Mick on a solo tour, this is many years ago. Where were we at? We were leaving. I think we were. Yes, we were leaving Africa. And that week we had heard Paul McCartney got busted. He got busted in Japan. So as we were coming into Japan, he was being escorted out by the Japanese authorities.
Amazing.
It wasn't really funny, but so we're on an escalator going in. He's surrounded by the authorities going out, and Mick yells across the hall, "Hey, Paul, don't let Linda pack your bags anymore." I thought that was a little cold.
Does that put you guys on best behavior while you're in Japan? You go like, oh boy, they're busting Beatles here.
I'd been to Japan many times before that, so I knew, bringing anything illegal into Japan is a big no-no.
Yeah.
Big no-no.
So there's been 35 years of the Stones with Bernard Fowler, way more than there were without you. How does one become a Rolling Stone?
How does one become a Rolling Stone? I guess it's a little different for everyone. I'm sure if you ask Ronnie Wood, who was the last original Stones member brought in, he'd have a completely different story. But for me, how I became involved with the Stones, I was working a lot with a New York City producer, my guru, Bill Laswell. I'd been working with him a lot, and Bill got a gig to produce Mick's first solo album, She's the Boss. And I was traveling with Herbie Hancock at the time. And I had a break from touring with Herbie. I had 10 days, it was 10 days exactly. And I was going home, and when I got home, the phone rang, and it was Bill Laswell saying, "Hey, go back to the airport." And I went back to the airport. I flew to London. He picks me up, and we're driving around London. I still don't know why I'm there. And he brings me to this house in a part of London called Swiss Cottage, and we walked into this house, and there was a big white house. We walked in and walked into a room. There was a guy sitting on the floor, and Bill says to the guy, "Hey, this is Bernard Fowler. This is the guy I've been telling you about." And the guy turned around, and it was Mick Jagger. Bill leaves the room, and Mick invites me on the floor, and he's strumming, and we start humming, and I did some vocal arrangement for that first record. And then when the Stones were doing their record, they had like a 9-year hiatus. I happened to be living in London at the time. I was working with a band called Tackhead, and Mick called me. And he says, "I've been looking for you, everywhere. Where are you?" I said, "I'm in London." He said, "In London? How long have you been here?" I said, "I've been here for months." he says, well, you know, the Stones are making a new record. I could use a hand. Come on by the studio. And I went by the studio. That record was Steel Wheels. And that was the day that I met all of them.
Hmm. And before you know it, you're in. It's like a secret society or something. You're sucked in, and then
Yeah, well, you know, for a lot of years, I didn't know whether I would be called back or not. So whenever I was not working with the Stones, I was always doing my thing. And I think, as you know, I spent a lot of years with Stevie Salas and I.
yeah.
We have a project called Nickel Bag, not Nickelback, Nickel Bag. And so like I said, when I wasn't with the Stones, I was doing a lot of other things.
Yeah, you made a lot of music. Let's talk about your last two solo albums for a minute. I love them both. Are really interesting choices in covers. And this last one, you know, I was thinking about some people have a gig, you play a lot of Stone songs. Sometimes you run away from that to go do something else. You made a really interesting choice. You went head first into the Stones and then sang the hell out of those songs. They're beautiful renditions of them that really for me was like, I was hearing words I had never heard before. What sent you down that path and what inspired you?
During a sound check, I went on stage and I was practicing my conga. And Chuck Leavell, who's the piano player for the Stones, he comes on stage. He says, "Hey, we're gonna do this next song for." I can't remember what song it was, but we're gonna do this at the sound check. We're gonna start with that at the sound check. So I'm playing my drums, and I just started reciting that song that we were going to do. And you know, everybody's on stage, and you know, kind of, they all looked at me, and you know, they were smiling, you know, and it became a thing that I did. And Mick said to me, he said, "Bernard, I've heard Rolling Stone songs done a lot of ways." He said, "but I've never heard Stone songs done that way."
Yeah.
And that was a green light for me. So, and I said to him that day, I said, "Well, when the tour is over, I'm going to go into the studio and cut it." And he said, "You should."
Yeah.
And that's where it started.
Yeah. That's interesting. I was wondering about the politics of singing with Mick so much and so many of these songs, doing them together in concert, and then going like, you know what, I'm going to go do these. And what, but having his blessing, I guess, is the way you do it, you know?
Yes. It was important, you know, to get his blessing. And when I started recording, I had to go to New York for something. And whenever I'm in New York, I'll call Keith, and I called him, and he happened to be at a studio, and I went by to see him, and we talked a bit, and I said, "I want to play something for you." And I played him, you know, just some rough tracks of you know, some of those songs. And he looked at me and he kind of smiled and he said, "Damn, Fowler, you went deep." So that was another thumbs up. And I thought, you know, I'm on the right track. So when I left New York and went back, I completed it, you know, found all the songs that I wanted to use and did it.
I had a question. So Stevie, I was talking to Stevie Salas, a mutual friend of ours. He told me, I'll ask you this question. Feel free to pass. I don't know. He said that in the Stones camp, it's a known fact that you're either Keith's friend or Mick's friend. There's no in between. But those rules don't apply to you, and that you're the only person to dance on both sides of that flame, is the way he put it. How have you managed to walk that line, and is that true at all?
No, it's very true. Usually, yes, in that Stones camp, you know, people tend to be in one camp or the other. I never act that way with them. You know, I love the band, and I wasn't going to be on one side or the other. I was there for the band. You know, Mick brought me into that situation, you know, and Keith and I became, you know, good friends. We became really close really fast. And, if, after a show, if Mick wanted to go hang out and he called, I'd go and hang out with him. And, and another day, I'd stay in the hotel and listen to music with Keith. So I just never wanted to take sides. It wasn't about either one of them. It was about the band. And Stevie's right. I remember there was a guy that worked with the Stones for a lot of years, and before a show, we're having dinner. We're all having dinner, and this guy walked in. He walks into the room, and he looks at me and he says, "I don't know who the hell you think you are. You're either in this camp, you're either in Mick's camp, or you're in Keith's camp. Nobody's in both camps." And I said, "Well, that's your problem."
So true. I think it's like a talent that we should be teaching our children. Like, we're at a point in history where everything is so divided, you've got to pick a side. And there's a lot of stuff that's in between and about all of it. And
That's right. And they've been friends so long. They're they are brothers. Like brothers have these fights every, now and then, and that's what happens with them. So, and to be on one side helps create that division. I didn't want any part of that.
yeah, you work with amazing people, Sly and Robbie to Yoko Ono, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Michael Buble, like a very wild mix of people. Who was the most fun to work with? Who's the most challenging? What are some highlights that jump out in your memory?
The most fun to work with, I think there's a few of them. When I was working with PIL, Public Image Limited, Johnny Rotten, that was an amazing time. That was an amazing record. Still, it's one of my favorite records, and I had a lot of fun working with him. I was actually hired to do the vocal arrangements and to be his vocal coach. And I remember going in and I'm thinking, vocal coach? John sings the way John sings,
Yeah, right.
So, instead of trying to, change it at all, I just showed him some tricks on, things that I did, breathing and phrasing and stuff like that. I didn't try to change him at all. And that was an amazing session. I remember on that session was drummer Ginger Baker.
Wow.
Ginger Baker, who up until that record, people hadn't seen for a long time.
Yeah.
So I think Bill went to Italy, found Ginger Baker, and he came back. I remember asking him about him, and he said, I remember Bill saying that Ginger lived in this house, and he said when he got there, he said he was sitting there talking to Ginger Baker, and a horse walked into the living room. And I thought that was pretty funny.
John Lydon, or Johnny Rotten, and Ginger Baker are notoriously two of the most difficult people in the world. So getting in a studio with them seems like a crazy mission, but a great album.
That was one of the smoothest recording sessions ever. Recently, I did a celebrating David Bowie tour.
Yeah, I went and saw that. That was such a wonderful night.
Yes, thanks. And that was really challenging. Before that show, actually, I did a tour with guitar player Earl Slick, and it was the anniversary of David Bowie's Station to Station album, which happened to be one of my favorite records. And when Earl asked me to do that, of course I agreed to it. And I think I spent like I spent like 2 weeks doing nothing but listening and eating David Bowie, because I didn't want to go and do the tour and just sing the songs the way I would sing them.
Yeah.
And David had just died. So it was important that when people heard me sing these songs, they didn't just hear me, but they heard me singing David.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time listening to David's phrasing and, you know, the places in his voice that he did things, so that I could just be closer to it, and that when people heard us playing, they could hear him.
Right. There's a direct transmission from
Exactly
whichever planet he chose when he left us.
Exactly, and it served me well spending that time digesting Bowie, because, you know, that tour and the one that you saw, you know, people were crying, you know, and people would say to me, you know, at some point, you know, I'm watching the show and I close my eyes and I could swear I heard David.
Yeah.
And that's because of the time that I spent, that, you know, that they could hear that.
That was one of those shows where, you know, there's always like a song or two where you get chills. And that was one of those shows that from the first note to the last was like, I'm shaking.
Chills. That's awesome. I mean, and it also helped, you know, to have, you know, the guys in the band that played with David, you know, Carmine Rojas, Earl Slick, Mike Garson, you know, that.
Let me ask you one more thing. One more thing just on your credits. This was so, and again, pass if it's not interesting. A couple things jumped out. Touring with Steven Seagal.
I hate that you bring that up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please.
That's all right. No, it's okay. It's okay, Donick. That's probably one of the low points, you know, that I did that. I had first moved to LA. I had first got here to LA, and I didn't know a whole lot of people. And somehow he got my number. And, you know, I'm a musician. I needed to work. And he had a handful of dates that he was doing. And when I found out, you know, about some of the other players, I thought, let me do this gig. And, you know, I did it. It was short, and I was glad it was over.
He seems like a complicated individual as well.
It's very full of himself.
All right, let's talk about the Stones a little bit. You know, there's always the cliche that a band is like a family. Is the Stones extended family more like the Simpsons or more like the Sopranos?
Maybe a combination of both.
Fair.
Maybe a combination of both, but it is a family. I mean, you know, I've been there long enough now to have seen a lot of their babies grow up.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of their adult children now, when I got into the band, they were like 4 and 5 years old. And some of them were not even born.
What is the most on-brand Stones thing you felt like you were doing? And then what is the most off-brand with the band? So for example, you're all suddenly playing Scrabble or going to an Applebee's or something.
Well, you know, I've played a lot of dominoes.
Yeah.
After show, days off, that's one of Keith's favorite pastimes. We'd play dominoes. We'd sit, we'd have some drinks, we'd listen to music, really good music, and we'd play dominoes. The other side, you know, which always amazed me, still does to this day. We do a 2.5-hour show. I get to the hotel, shower, the telephone would ring, and it'd be Mick on the other line. Nod. Hey Mick, what are you doing? No, there's a really good club, you know. Let's go and have a look. This is after him being on stage 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
You know, of course, let's go. We'd get to the club, and he's on the dance floor.
Yeah.
He's on the dance floor. And I would say to myself, this, you know, it's just amazing, you know, how much energy this cat has.
So these cliches about, oh, they're so old and all these jokes, can the comedy world just retire that, I guess, at this point?
Retire it.
Yeah.
You know,
let it go.
You know, as far as they go, age is just a number. I mean, even today, Mick still outperforms people a third his age.
Yeah. Yeah. How many gigs, I mean, how many gigs would you guess you've played with the Stones at this point?
You know what? I've got it written down somewhere, but maybe 500-600.
Which is the best one?
The best one. I mean, that's a hard one because there's so many best ones. But if I have to name a best one, it would be performing with the Stones on Copacabana Beach to 1.2 million people.
Yeah.
I mean, the people went as far as the eye could see. That's just the people on the beach, and then when you look into the ocean, you couldn't see the end of where the boats were.
Yeah.
It was so many people in the street that the promoter of that show, they built a bridge from the hotel over the road to the stage, because they said there's no way that we would be able to walk from the hotel right across the street to the stage. We wouldn't have been able to do it. They had to build a bridge.
Amazing. Yeah, and that's such a compliment in places like that where music matters so much.
Oh yes. Oh yes. I think that's the biggest audience that anyone has ever played for. Any live show anyone had ever played for. It was amazing.
On all of those gigs, you know, there's this, this impression, it's rock and roll and it's crazy. Now, it's not. It's a business. There's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of work. There's so many people have jobs to do. But fans show up for the party, right? And the Stones have the widest array of fans you can have. Like, I can imagine everyone from Johnny Depp to George Bush showing up at a show. What is the most unexpected fan encounter, sort of wandering around backstage going like, wait, what's going on? We're trying to do a concert here.
Bill Clinton. I think I would probably say Bill Clinton, seeing him walking backstage. Yeah, pretty surreal, the president.
Right. You get a little double take.
Yes, the president, backstage at a Stone show, and not just one time. He's been there more than once.
I feel like Bill Clinton might have become president so that he could get access to Rolling Stone shows.
It worked.
Whenever I imagine that I'm about to be kidnapped or a gang is going to grab me or something, I think, well, I'll just tell them, like, remember I worked on The Simpsons. Do you guys like The Simpsons? So we're good, right? You saw that episode? And then hope I can get out of it. Have you ever been in a situation where you're like, I better use my Rolling Stones card and get out of this thing?
I'm sure there has been, but there was an incident where I didn't use the Rolling Stone card to get out of it. This is probably during my bad days with the Rolling Stones. I was in Germany someplace, and I was going to a club. I was going to a club with with a friend who had a friend from Germany, and she ran a modeling agency. She ran the agency, and she was taking us around to these clubs, and I'm walking with her through the crowd, the club. Somebody noticed me and said, "Hey, Bernard, here." And they gave me something, and I just threw it in my cigarette pack. I thought it was weed or something. And, we're partying, dancing, and she says, "Hey, let's go to another club." And on the way out, she says, "Hey, do you guys have anything, anything in your pockets or anything?" And I looked in my pocket. I'm like, "No." I said, "No, I'm cool." And she says, "Because, once we get out of this alleyway, a lot of times there are police there, and they'll check you." And she looked at me, she said, "They'll definitely check you." And I thought, well, I'm cool.
Right.
I forgot that I took something from someone and put it in my box. On the way out, sure enough, like she said, they pulled me over, stopped. They took my ass to jail.
German jail.
German jail, and they were not very nice. They weren't very nice, but and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to tell them I'm with the Stones, because this could be, that could work against me. So, they gave me the fine. But, funny thing about that, they asked me what hotel I was staying at, asked me if I had any money. And I'm like, "What?" "Well, you had to pay a fine."
Right.
So they drove me to the hotel. They pulled up in front of the hotel, and I told them, "No, I won't get out." I said, "You got to go around the corner." I didn't want anybody seeing me get out of this policeman.
Gotcha.
They went around the corner. I went upstairs, got the money, came downstairs, went back to police station, paid the fine.
Well, that's at least full service policing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Oh
An
man.
embarrassing time for me. But they found out later. And said, "Why didn't you call anybody?"
Right. Why don't you invite Angela Merkel to the Stones concert? You'd be fine. So let me ask.
That makes me think of another story. This real quick. Okay. This is another different time, different tour. We were in Austria. And it was a day of show. I got up early because there was a street with a lot of shops, and I thought, let me just go and do some, a little shopping. And as I'm doing that, I noticed there's a guy following me. And I thought, no, maybe he's not following me. So I go into a store, I come out, and he's standing there. And I start walking up the street. Now, I walked to the end already, so I'm heading back towards the hotel, and the guy starts yelling. He starts yelling, in German. I don't know what he's saying. And, I'm like, this guy is crazy. I duck into a store, and he's yelling. And, the woman is looking at me, and I'm like, I said, "Can you tell me what he's saying?" And she said, "I'm so sorry. I can't repeat what he's saying. I can't repeat it." I'm like, okay. So I get out the store, make it back to the hotel, go to the show. Now I have people that are meeting me there.
Yeah.
I have their tickets. So I tell them, "Meet me at this gate, such and such time." So I borrowed a little motorcycle from one of the runners and drive to this gate. So there's police standing there, and I pull up, and I'm waiting for my friends to walk by so I can give them a ticket. Some guy walks past. Now I'm standing inside with two cops standing there, and the guy looks at me and he starts yelling. This is the same day.
Yeah.
The guy is yelling German, and I'm just like ignoring the guy. And one of the cops says to me, "Do you know this guy?" I'm like, this guy says that you stole his tickets. And I'm like, look, here's my laminate. I'm on a motorcycle. I work for the band. Why don't I don't need his tickets. Anyway, these guys took me to a holding cell.
Oh.
They take me to a holding cell. I'm there for like a couple of hours. Nobody knows where I am.
Yeah.
So I guess they figured out it was, they fucked up.
Right.
So I get back, it's almost time for the show. And like most show days, I go in to check on Keith and see how he's doing. Hey, Keith, how you doing? Da, da, da. And he's getting ready for the show. And he says, hey, Brother B, how was your day today? Do you have a good day today? And I said, oh, man. I said, Keith, I had the craziest day today. And I told him about the guy that followed me up the street. Then I told him about the cops taking me and putting me in this holding cell. And he was, I think he was shaving or something, and he stopped. And he said, what did you say? I said, yeah, man. I said, I had these tickets, for some friends, and the cops, they took me a holding cell. Why did I tell him this story? First of all, Keith is one of the most loyal people you will ever meet in your life. I told him that. Keith has a walk. He has a walk. When he's upset, he walks a certain way, and he started pacing the room. He called his man Friday in. He said, get JC in here. JC was the head of our security. I want him in here now. He explained to JC, look, some cops took Bernard and put him in a holding cell. And I want to know why. I want them here. He's on the warpath. Every dignitary, from the chief of police, the mayor, the governor, they're all out in the stands waiting for the show to start. We are not going on stage until those two cops are brought to backstage.
Awesome.
Now, they didn't come. But Keith demanded that every chief of police, everybody was there. And now I'm feeling like crap. Mick calls me, Bernard, what happened? I tell him the story, and he's like, oh, Bernard, couldn't you have waited till after the show to tell Keith that story? And I'm like, Mick, I wasn't thinking it. Anyway, I'm in my dressing room. Keith comes in my dressing room and says, B, come here. I walk outside the dressing room, and he has them all lined up. They're all standing in a line. And he said, apologize. He made every single one of them apologize. The show was held up for an hour.
Oh, man.
Not more. But that's the kind of cat Keith Richards is.
That's a great story, and maybe is a solution to some of our policing problems now. Put Keith in charge. Put
Keith in charge. Keith for president.
I had one other question just about Bill Wyman. You had some crossover with Bill. He was in the band for a bit and then took off. I was wondering if you knew about his love of metal detecting. And is that something you follow? Just because I have one of these, I figured I'd show you. So my understanding is he left the Stones to go metal detecting and came up with a series of Bill Wyman's signature metal detectors. So I got one. I started metal detecting, and I found about $1.50 at this point. So thank you.
I've got one still in the box.
Do you?
Yeah, but I've never seen it's funny. I've never seen Bill do that. I've never seen him with a metal detector on a day off looking for stuff. So
he just he just saw the money in it. He was like, the Stones are fine, but this is where the real money is.
yes, yes, I hope it did well for him. It's funny. I remember the last year that Bill was with us. That year, Bill wouldn't fly. He wouldn't take short flights and definitely would not take a helicopter. He had developed a fear of flying.
Yeah.
And the next year, that was it.
Well, we appreciate the metal detector. We've been enjoying it.
That's
As I
awesome.
said, I'm close to $2 at this point of what I found in 10
You
years.
got the metal detector. That is.
So let's talk about Havana Moon and this concert in Cuba. This was 500,000 people showed up at this thing. It's not just another show, obviously. Give us
Yeah.
an overview of the trip going to Cuba. What that was like for you guys.
At one point, I didn't think we were going to be able to go. Okay. The gig was booked, and around that same time, Obama was going to Cuba around the same time we were there, and all flights are canceled. You can't, while he's there, there's no flying in and out or around Cuba.
Right. And this is the first president in almost 100 years to visit. Right.
Exactly. So they had to move the date. And I think the window was, really small. And because of Obama's trip, that window became even smaller. So for a second, I didn't know if we would go. And then the last thing that I heard about that was the Pope. The Pope, I think, was due to go to Cuba also. And I think the day that we were scheduled to perform, the Pope asked the boys to not play because I think it was on a Good Friday. And of course, they told the Pope very nicely, no. We played anyway. So I think it was more like 800,000, maybe close to 900,000 people. Free concert. One of the things that I remember, when we finally got to the grounds, we look for the typical, where our dressing rooms are, the VIP room, da 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 da. There was no VIP room.
Right.
Because in Cuba, there are no VIPs. So they had to take that off and just put, I think, like family room or something like that.
Funny.
It was an amazing show. Amazing to see all those people.
Yeah. Again, in one of these places where music matters so much, it's part of the soul of everything there,
I was talking to some people there, and I, I'm asking them, yeah, you guys know the Stones, you know the music? Oh yeah, and I'm like, how did you get the music? And they explained that what they would do, they would find the tallest building that they could with their portable radios and surf for airwaves.
Yeah.
And they'd hit a Florida music channel, and that's how they got the music.
Yeah. It's so cool. It's so cool. I had so this organization, we have Musack.org. It
Yes.
sponsors kids music programs. We went down there a couple times and brought guitars and support kids at the conservatorio. I think you guys went.
Yes, yeah, it's my understanding that the Stones donated a lot of musical instruments to the conservatory, and I did also hear that that the sound system that was used for the date, they donated that to the Cuban people as well.
That's cool. It felt like we were at a moment right then where it was just about to open and we could put aside all of this bullshit for 50 years. And it's sad where we are now, but we'll get it back.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
I have a question. So we have one segment we call Tips for Kids, brought to you by Musack.org.
Guys, help the kids out. Go to Musack.org. No, that's the way you spell it.
Do you just have some tips for kids, either about how to find your voice or how to be a Rolling Stone, or something you've learned from your life you want to share?
Well, I wish I could give them some tips on how to be a Rolling Stone, but I think that machine would have stopped by the time that they're ready. But if there's any tips for kids, listen to as much music as possible. Try to find the beauty in all of it. To be a working musician means, I think of myself, the reason I was able to jump from Public Image to the Rolling Stones to Motorhead and sing for Ozzy Osbourne. I was able to do that because I have an appreciation for a lot of different type of music. And when it's time, when you get that call to do something that you didn't grow up playing, but if you have a love and appreciation for it, you can find it inside you. You can find it inside you to be able to do that job.
Yeah.
So just be passionate about what you do and play and play and play and play with everybody you can. It helps you grow. It helps your ears to get a little bigger. And you can bounce from one genre to the next. The really good, or the musicians that are able to be musicians only can jump from one place to another. That's what makes them special.
Yeah, and makes it universal and breaks
all
every barrier that we could ever invent is gone.
That's right. That's right. There's only two good kinds of music: good and better.
Love it. When we went to Cuba, just a couple other questions on Cuba, because we're going to watch the movie in a few minutes here. Well, you're not. We're going to go and watch it. You don't have to stay for 2.5 hours here. But when we went there, I wrote a piece for Relics magazine about the trip, because we did a lot of music traveling around, and the best I could do was to describe it as it's a little bit like being on acid when you go to Cuba. You never know what's going to be around every corner. Sometimes it's incredible beauty, incredible sadness, something that makes you laugh. It doesn't ever make sense quite in your brain, but it reveals something new every corner, Right. So you guys were there you're pulling off a major show. What was the most surreal or oddest thing? Did you guys have a lot of flexibility? Did for example, Mick want to go out and dance at a club afterwards? Anything that was like, wow, this is wild?
We were going to dinner. And as you know, finding a restaurant in Cuba is not an easy thing. Finding really good food, or the kind of Cuban food that you might know, is hard to find when you get to Cuba unless you're going to someone's house. But we went to dinner, and it was one of the old buildings, old architecture, and you look. There are windows missing. And I remember walking in, and one of the staircases was missing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we walk in the place, we find these steps, we walk up the steps, and you look, There's somebody living on one of the floors. The door's open, the space is open, and we walk up maybe 2-3 flights, and there's this restaurant. And it was a good restaurant. Everything that was on the menu they had, and the food was incredible.
Yeah. The show is amazing. I was thinking about, how when you go into a show, sometimes artists talk about like, oh, we get sick of singing the hits. We just want to play whatever. This show is every song the Stones do is a hit. Like, is there any song that's your favorite or anything that you ever get sick of singing?
I do have a favorite. My favorite song of the show is a song that I don't participate. My favorite song of the Rolling Stone show is Midnight Rambler.
Yeah.
That song gets me every time. Every time they play it, I love it. It's never the same. It's never the same show to show. It's always something a little different. And you know what? That's one of the things that I love about the Rolling Stones. It's never played exactly from show to show. There's always some ear candy you're gonna get. No matter how many times we sing or play the song, we're gonna get some candies.
Is there anything in this particular show in Havana that we should look for as we're watching it? Any movie magic? Have you seen the movie recently?
You know what? The joy on the faces of the audience, that's a show within itself. Just, while people are watching it, take into consideration that those people have never seen anything like that before.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to ask this. I'm not sure what your take on it is, but tell me if you even have a take. You're a black man in a white blues band from Britain, right? One of the best blues bands ever at this point, making music. You have such an interesting perspective on race, I guess, at a time when America is having a real moment of reflection. Is there anything you'd want to share about that?
I think people need to realize how intertwined we are. Yes, Rolling Stones, greatest rock and roll blues band in the world. But a lot of people don't know what they listened to get to where they were. And that makes us more intertwined. We have more in common than we have not in common.
Yes, we are the same stuff.
We are the same stuff, man. Yeah. We are the same stuff. We like the same stuff. We listen to the same stuff. And because you're not born listening to blues doesn't mean that you can't become a great blues player.
Yeah, yeah. If there's one thing they've proved, that is for sure.
That is for sure.
I also wanted to throw people out to bernardfowler.com. They can check out solo albums and find more about you, etc.
Please do. Come on.
Get on board, people.
I'd love to see you all there.
All right, so now we're going to do our last talk show lightning round.
Okay, Donick, hit me.
What's the last song you sang that put a smile on your face?
A change is gonna come.
You talk about chills. That Sam Cooke, any version almost, but that Sam Cooke version, incredible. Last great meal you had?
Last great meal, the last great meal I had was probably in Croatia. And I had a steak tartare that I normally don't eat that blew my socks off, along with a bowl of these mussels, or they look more like a mussel than clam, but they're from the waters around Croatia. That they're illegal actually to go and harvest. I think you need a special pass, but this guy, I guess he sent his boys out to collect a few, and it was the best thing I ever ate.
Last thing that Keith did that either caught you off guard, made you laugh, took you by surprise.
Okay. Oh, it was recent. It was recent. Since this Corona thing, I called him a few weeks ago and we're talking, and he said, "Hey, Brother B, what are you doing? What you been doing?" And I said, "Keith, I've been growing vegetables." And he laughed. He laughed, and then he said, "Patty's gonna send you something." My phone pings, and there's Keith, growing vegetables.
That's great. I myself have been killing vegetables. I tried to grow them. I did not do well, but that's amazing. Last thing that made you optimistic.
Seeing all the young people, black, white, yellow, green, all in the streets marching for justice for George Floyd. I still get goosebumps when I think of it. And when I saw it, it just blew my mind. It's their world. They can bring us together. And we can be together, and seeing them all in the street like that proves it. It
Great.
can happen.
Great. So Bernard, thank you so much. I love talking with you. This was really fun. I want to give you the last word.
Thanks, Donick. This has been a blast. Thank you for asking me to do it. I'm glad. I've been really quarantined. I've been alone during this time, so it's good to talk to you. Last word. Well, enjoy the film and love each other. Let's love each other. I think we all know what we have to do. I think I've had enough of Agent Orange for the last 4 years. How about you?
Very good. Thank you, Bernard. Enjoy the Rolling Stones Havana Moon.
Thank you very much. Enjoy. Peace.